We could have homes on separate coasts, go dive in Greece with squids. Could have been so bleeping rich, but instead we had kids. They won't smile for a photo, they won't eat the food we choose. That's why we're heading to the parents' lounge to drown ourselves in booze. Every day we're more exhausted, we haven't slept in years. They hit me in the nuts so bad, my eyes filled up with tears. And yes, we'd like to fake our death and go off of the grids, but the truth is we are softies and we truly love our kids. So join us every Tuesday night to laugh at all our pain. Evening in the parents' lounge is the cure to staying sane.
Hello!
Hello! Welcome to a completely unannounced episode of the Parents' Lounge. Mulligan, were you not ready to be part of it?
I thought you guys were bringing both my set. Okay, yep, no, I'm ready. I'm here.
I thought so too, but I love that you're in it right out of the chute. So,
well, I made the call last second. I was like, she's not at all prepared. So
yeah, I wasn't. I just got to notice that our checking account's overdrawn, so I was just save it for the
you're
show.
Having the
Caleb.
same kind of
This is the
weekend.
show? Okay.
Yeah, I also got I identity thefted today, so all of my cards are frozen.
Oh my God! You think is there somebody out there running around in a Black Panther mask just saying it's you? What?
that's it. They're wearing that's right, Iron Man. They're an Iron Man. All right, listen, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. To all of our viewers out there.
Top of the morning to you.
Unannounced. We were going to pre-tape a show this morning. I have a wonderful guest, and he was coming in to pre-tape. And we said, hey, why don't we go out live? And so here we are. And we have a fantastic show. Here's the deal about St. Patrick's Day. I don't know about you guys, but my daughter, I was making breakfast this morning, and she goes, what's so special about St. Patrick's Day? And I was like, well, right now, very little. But one day, you are actually going to set an alarm to get up to get to an Irish pub as quickly as possible in the morning. And you will spend the entire day there, and you'll watch NCAA basketball and drink your ass off. And it'll be a super, super fun day. But those days are over.
You're not doing any kind of pre-training with her there? Like you're going to let her binge on chocolate milk this afternoon or something?
I did. I snuck some Jamesons into her Cocoa Puffs this morning.
There you go.
So that's good. Yeah. And it's kind of fitting today because I would say St. Patrick, it's so funny because, you know, the Irish in Ireland, there's no like hardcore drinking on St. Patrick. They go to church, I think. It's not like the holiday that it is here. They kind of laugh at us.
Yeah. I was going to say it's, you know, everything there is like, it's about either Protestantism or Catholicism. Like I remember we flew into Ireland to visit my sister over her spring break there once. And we landed on Good Friday and everything was closed. Like there wasn't a pub. They closed down for the day the Lord died.
Yeah.
So yeah, St. Patrick's Day, I think was invented. Like, I think in Ireland, it's like actually a saint that they like, you know, respect.
Well, didn't he get the snakes out of Ireland or something? Isn't that the?
Oh, I wish he'd get them. I've got a plane he should go check on.
Hey, we have a fantastic show today. It's going to actually air tonight when it was scheduled to air, but we figured we'd go live anyway. We have a wonderful guest, and because it is St. Patrick's Day, I thought it was kind of fitting that we have him on because basically he has a new book out called Village Idiot, a memoir, and it is about him growing up in the West Village as a child actor. Trying everything and every drug, I believe, and alcohol under the sun as a child growing up in New York City. And it's funny because I know a lot of people who raising kids in the city, and I'm always amazed. I'm like, really? And they go, yeah, they take the subway at like the age of 7 or whatever. They don't care and stuff. And so it's kind of really interesting to me. But he's an old friend of mine. He was a pretty famous kid actor. He's in Newsies, Falcon Crest. You might know him as the Milk. It does a body good kid. Let's bring in Dave Scheinkopf. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that warm arousal of
I
milk.
know, dude. Your book's awesome. And
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, Jamie, for you, I wore green only for you because I'm a Jew and we don't have St. Patrick's Day. So, but my friend told me yesterday, he's like,
Wait,
"Look,
what?
you got to do it. You got what Jews do you know are Irish? I mean, do you know a lot of
Are you
Irish
kidding?
Jews?"
No. We like
Let's be honest,
in the entire region.
I gotta tell you, on glass of wine number 4 on Passover, you're a little Irish, okay?
Well, you know, what I was told is that you're supposed to have 4 glasses this morning, so I'm already 3 deep. But you know, what's funny is my friend said, "Well, you're supposed to do it for your friends, you know, if you have Irish friends." So, all right, here, fucking Jamie. Here's my fucking green shirt. There you go.
Although
You know what's funny?
it is
Listen.
Purim.
Yeah, it is. It's true. No, I'm not saying we don't drink. I'm saying we don't have
No,
have
but I'm
Irish.
saying this isn't today Purim.
It is
Or-
Purim today. Yeah, today is Purim.
See, I'm dressed up for Purim and St. Patrick's Day.
Look
Hold
at
on.
you,
gonna go-
unicorn. Look
I'm
at
gonna
you.
put on my costume. It's great. Hold on one second here. Here's a fucking Minecraft. There's a
Oh, there.
anyway. I have a child too, obviously.
How old?
Because if you my son, I have an 8-year-old boy named Deacon, and he's the light of my life. And
Aw.
yesterday was his birthday, so it was quite the day. 27 kids in a park. I guess COVID's over. At least it is in the
Congrats.
suburbs.
Yeah.
Yes,
For
thank
now.
you.
For a while.
It'll come back. It's
Thank
gonna
you.
come
Yeah,
back.
it'll come back. It'll come back. Now we have
Doing
the
a summer tour with Lollapalooza.
it's now the Deltacron, the Deltacrons, which sounds like a great band. So I mean, I guess it works out pretty well.
Or a Decepticon.
Yeah,
Ugh.
exactly.
Oh,
Which brings me to the Transformers that I did.
yes.
Yeah, I like all the segues that you guys put out
So you
there.
are the voice of a Transformer.
I was, yeah. I have a fairly good voiceover career. I do. I was in Dr. Dolittle, and I was in Transformers and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Just a lot of kid movies. I do a lot of voices like in Those Amazing Animals, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can hear it.
In
His voice
Transformers,
is
yeah,
like smooth,
Yeah.
melted butter.
yeah.
nice-
I mean,
There's a nice timber to it.
you know what's
Yeah.
funny? Everybody said to me like, "When are you putting out the audiobook?" And I say the same thing. As soon as you buy the hardcover
Yeah.
and pay for that, then I'll put out an audiobook so you can pay for that too. Because otherwise you would just listen in your car and you wouldn't have anything to have of me other than my voice.
I actually, can I tell you, because I'm writing something too, and everyone has told me, they said, don't even waste time. They said, do it as an audiobook. Because Audible is so much bigger. Like, I don't read that much anymore, but I listen to books. Does anybody else? Am I the only old guy?
I listen to
Yeah.
book.
I don't listen to
listen
any
to
of that.
Nobody's reading anymore, dude.
I just listen to myself. But
The
you know what?
Audible book would be big.
Well, I will. It's going to go out. I just started working with a guy on it, and I'm going to go out. It's a 9-hour, 10-hour process for me to record an audiobook. So I am working on it. But the thing is that I got to be honest. The reason that I put out a hardcover and a soft cover and an ebook all first was because to me, I really wanted that, Library of Congress. Like I wanted to be there. I want to be an author that's in the Library of Congress and all that shit. And I think it's not that it's important. It was just kind of a thing for me personally. It was like why I put out a hardcover. I wanted a hardcover because I wanted to read a hardcover book because it's nice. It's just a tangible thing. So.
I mean,
also
between
love-
you and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Laura Boebert, they'll let anybody into Congress at this point, it feels like, is what you're...
I mean, if you have an AR-15.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that because I believe there's some guns in your book as well, aren't there?
There is.
Some muggings. So go ahead, Kate. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I love Jamie again, the bedside manner. Kayla's like, you're like, yeah, so I'm gonna have a hardcover and then I'll do the audiobook. And Jamie's like, yeah, I was told nobody reads books anymore and just do an audiobook. So
Which is great because it's obviously pushing the product. I mean, it's good. I was told this is the anti-product push. This
I'm
is
sorry,
actually-
Mulligan, have we
people
ever
want their
not been-
fucking money back from my book now.
Have we ever not been totally honest on this show?
yeah, no, it's
To a fault.
Have we ever not been totally honest in life? I'm
That
trying to
should be
see.
all right. That should be the name of the show, Honest to a Fault.
Yeah,
Well, let's jump into it because why don't we make this the audio book?
oh
You just start reading. We'll
yeah, just yeah.
I love how he has a bunch of books behind him. Like you and I have like drawings of our kids. Mulligan's in front of her bed, and then Dave's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I have a library of books that I."
Hey, why are there no clothes on your bed?
On
Listen,
those
can I tell you
chance
something?
times
We're-
when I did wake up, I
Yeah.
always had the most amazing boner. I'd look down and there it was. Nothing exceptional, but a fact nonetheless. I was a pervert at 12. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Well, I just went from 6 to midnight.
So the book is about, is it 1 year in the life of 12? Okay.
No, it's actually, so the book starts, I'm glad you did your homework. The book starts
He says nobody reads anymore, and until you get him the audiobook.
I read the highlights of it all.
I'm sorry, I said I wouldn't cry.
I didn't want the stories wrecked. I like to hear it old school, like a campfire in the 1800s.
So the book takes place, it starts off in 1982, when I was 12 years old. And it goes into about 1989 when I moved out to California. I was 19 and I moved out there. What's interesting, I think, about the book is that it does cover a lot of aspects. You know, it's got a lot of highs and lows, a lot of lows and a lot of highs. Not speaking about the drug use, because there was quite an extensive amount of that. But the thing about it,
when you were low, there were some highs.
I was definitely high.
It was definitely high.
You know, it's like I'll be honest with you. It's very strange when you put out a piece of yourself and you put out a piece of your life, especially a memoir, because it's a very heavy part of your life. And it's not. I don't really, for lack of a better term, I don't really pull any punches, you know, with it. So to me, it's something that's right there, you know. And I'm like, all right, who's gonna read it? Who do I not want to read it? You know, that kind of a thing. But at some point you just have to release and know that people just, hopefully, if one person gets something from it, then I did my job, you know. And that's what, to me, is the most important thing. But there is also a lot of comedy in it because it's funny, you know. I mean, there's just, it's a weird time, you know, in someone's life, especially mine, growing up in Greenwich Village in the 80s, you know, and it was just, shit was weird, you know.
Can I ask, I actually just don't know, like, Manhattan now, like, unless your last name's like Hadid or Trump, I don't feel like anyone can live in Manhattan anymore. Was it as impossible to live in Manhattan then, like, in terms of real estate? Or was it were some middle class people also able to live there?
You know, that's an interesting question, because there was a middle class then, and we all lived in rent controlled apartments. Everybody knew somebody who was wealthy and had, you know, they like owned. Like, nobody owned, we rented, you know.
Yeah.
I say, one of the quotes in my book is that, you know, we had a 2-bedroom apartment on 5th Avenue and 11th Street, and we looked great on paper. But, you know, it cost my dad $900 a month, which honestly was ridiculously expensive for him at the time. He really couldn't swing it. And he did it because it was important. We went there because the schools were great. And my mom promised us that we would move into the city. I lived in New Jersey for a couple of years. And when we moved into the city, that we would be, you know, within blocks of Washington Square Park. Now, what she didn't realize was that I would get to know the drug dealers there, which leads me to the next part of my book. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. Why, like, everyone I know with kids is like, we're moving out of the city. I know one dude, Mark Seaman, who still is like in the Upper East Side or Upper West Side, and he loves it.
Yeah.
They wanted to live in the city. Most times with kids, you want yards and a cul-de-sac and playgrounds.
I think it's like, you know, what's weird? I always say this, is that people wear growing up in the city like a badge of honor. You know, it's like, I fucking grew up in New York City. I'm from Staten Island. You know what I mean? I'm from Staten Island. I grew up in Staten Island. My fucking kids are from Staten Island. Everybody from fucking Staten Island. But now it's like, you don't want that. You know, you want to live like in New Rochelle, or you want to live in, like, you know, everybody moves to Jersey. Like, oh, I live in Marlboro now. I moved out of the city in Marlboro.
Greenwich. Oh, we live near the train stop. I met my wife in Manhattan, and one of my best friends, Eric Gilliland, still lives in the Village, and you could not. Now, like, this book would be written by Matthew Broderick and Jessica. Their children would be like, hey, I grew up in the Village. How was it? Pretty great. I was a billionaire.
Yeah, it was funny. When I moved out here one day, I was at a July 4th party, and I was like, it happened to be it wasn't it was descendants of the Ford family. So, you know, these are very wealthy people. And I go to this one kid who's like surfer. They're super nice people, like super nice, like totally down to earth. And I said, you know, just out of curiosity, like, how was it growing up here? And he goes, it's really, really nice. My life is pretty fucking good. I gotta be honest with you, because I don't have to wear anything forever. Like, I don't, but it's weird to think of not wanting for anything, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
and I guess they all still do stuff. Like we're hardworking people, you know. We just like hustle and do our thing, you know.
The city was different then too, though, the 80s,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the 70s was a battleground. And then the 80s were started. It was like all of a sudden Gordon Gekko, and it started to go like, hey, there's money and stuff, and it changed. But before that, it was kind of a tough city. I mean, you're 12 years old. It's early 80s.
Yeah. It's 1982, 1981, you know, and it's still like
Were you
didn't
terrified when you first moved there and you just walked out and were like, oh my
Well,
God?
you know what's interesting is where I lived in Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village was always a great place, and it was always gentrified. It was always a beautiful spot. There was nothing. My friends lived on the west side, which is a large part of my book takes place in West Beth, which is an artist community in New York City. And the east side, the East Village was a war zone. Like you didn't really go. Oh, thanks, Tommy. Like I just got a little note. Does that happen? Someone seeing that? I see
Watching
this.
us live, brother. That's
That's live. They
that.
can comment
He's
and
got 30
question.
pages left.
I
Yeah.
promised I wouldn't cry.
That's awesome, Tommy.
So I mean, one thing that like the East Village was this place like Alphabet City and Avenue A. It was one of the last places to be gentrified. I mean, I remember being in the 2000s before the fall of the towers, and it was still like it was rough. Like you didn't go into
Alphabet
those
City.
areas.
I mean, there's movies called Alphabet City, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
it's like gangland.
Hello.
Yeah.
But now it's not like I mean, now New York is like we had spoken, it's a place for the uber rich. And people, look, there's a lot of hardworking people that are listening to this podcast. There's a lot of hardworking people that I know that still live in New York City, but most people I know can't afford to live in the city. They live in Brooklyn, they live in Queens, they live in New Jersey. It's like, but we're all from there. So.
You can't even live in Brooklyn anymore, man.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
did you ever watch The Deuce?
of course I watched The Deuce.
Oh, did you love that show? I mean,
I
I was
did.
gonna say that. Did you feel like you were watching your upbringing unfold?
It was interesting because The Deuce takes place basically in like the late 70s. So I knew all those places. I mean, it's funny because everything that they didn't have it really where it was. Like, it wasn't that they did it on like Unreal Engine and they, created the fake stoops. They created sets that looked really nice. And I thought that's why they did so many interiors and all that stuff. I think they got the mood of the city down to a T because I mean, I would go when I was in the 80s and the late 70s, I would go to Playland uptown in the 40s, like it was an arcade. And you would go there to try to get away from truant officers when you were cutting school. And, people would try to molest you in there. I mean, there were people that were like pedophiles cruising this place, it was like, oh my God, it's like candy for a diabetic, So I think that New York was definitely in that show caught the flavor of New York. I mean, I could go on and on about the movies that I consider to be like The Pope of Greenwich Village is probably one of my all-time favorite movies, and I think that captured the essence of that time because it was that time. They shot that movie in like, I don't know, 85, 86, 84. I don't even remember, but it was such a prolific movie. And Daryl Hannah, I mean, they got it. You know what I mean? And the police.
They cut my thumbs off, Paulie. They cut my thumbs off. Dude, somewhere there's a NAMBLA meeting happening right now, and they're all just reminiscing. They're going, oh, guys, remember the 70s in New York?
Yeah, I mean,
Playland. Oh, I used to cruise that place all the time. No video cameras. Kids weren't trackable. They didn't have a phone. You could take them.
I'll be honest. So in 1979, I was in the 1980, I was in the 5th grade. And there was a young kid in the year before, I believe it was 79, who was walking to school for the first time by himself. And his name was Eitan Patz. And Eitan Patz was kidnapped and never heard from again. And that story changed New York forever. And New York that day lost its innocence. And he was the first milk carton kid. And
I remember that.
just recently, a guy was brought up on charges and he was put in jail, and it's the wrong guy. I mean, this guy was out of his mind. It's not the kid. It's not the guy. But regardless, people needed closure because there was never closure. There were movies made about it, and all this stuff. And it was crazy. But that's when New York lost its innocence. And I think why I'm getting such a great response to my book is that it's just a moment of that innocence back. And it's not even that there's not bad things that happen, because it is, but it's when we could still run around until 9 o'clock at night in New York City, and it wasn't a big deal. So
I was running around Hooksett, New Hampshire playing kick the can, and my mother ringing the bell to come in for dinner.
Jamie.
Yeah. And you were running around with drug dealers in Washington Park. Is that what basically was happening?
I was, it's funny because I was, it's like the drug dealers became my friends, Gemini and Chester and all these guys. And the thing about the characters in my book is that they're all, obviously they're real people that I changed the names of out of respect, but they're such characters and they're such good people. These guys looked out for me, so it's not like I was on my own, but I think a part of my problem was that, I came from a broken home in the sense that my parents got divorced. Thank you. Drug dealers are people. Genevieve, you're absolutely right. They are people too. It's just like kids are people too. We may be young,
listen,
and not full grown.
There's a reason that the pedophiles are the ones that are tortured in prison. Like the drug dealers, those guys, that's just a living. That's an earnings. But
it's honest work.
It's honest work.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? Look, I'm not like the drugs that I did. I was a pot smoker from the age of 12 or 13. And then I started doing acid at about 13. And, we started doing a little ecstasy when we were 15, 16. I mean, the acid really is kind of what got us hot on drugs in New York City. I did coke and I did, heroin a couple times, but it was more about
that's that old heroin, because people don't do heroin once anymore.
You don't do it once anymore. And we snorted it. We didn't mainline it. So, but I think that, to me, I don't think it was this vile wasteland. It was just Greenwich Village, and
was there a whole there's a posse of kids that you're with. And how about the first time that they were like, hey, we're all going to go do drugs, and you're 12 and you're like, yeah, you know what? But yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. I remember when I was smoking pot for the first time, and it was pot that I had gotten from a You're right. You're absolutely right.
Oh, Joey knows.
Oh, I don't know if he's calling me ho or if he's saying ho. So I'm going to say ho.
I think that you do know.
I think we all know.
He corrected it. Hi, Joey.
Or did he correct it? Now he's saying Hawaii, Kate. It's a Hawaii, Kate.
How dare you?
I'm so intrigued by that first leap into
for me it was there's a great story in my book about me and my friend Zed going to, he had met these kids. I was away. I went to summer camp most of my life. And
was it Jewish summer camp?
No. It was a place called French Woods. For anybody out there, French Woods
wow.
Festival of Performing Arts. It was a great place.
French Woods is
but what I did,
really legit.
I know it's a very legit place. I mean, Jason Robert Brown came out of there, and Doug Besterman and Andrea Burns, all these crazy celebrities came out of there. What's that asshole's name? Maroon 5, Adam Levine. Who have you seen? There's this TikTok thing where it's some fan grabs him and he's like, "What the fuck? Why are you touching me? Don't stop it." And then you see Michael Jackson praying down to somebody. It's awesome. It's a great spot. It's a really fucking really nice look for Adam Levine. Let me tell you. He's like, oh God, fuck. So
we're gonna have to bleep. This show is going to be adults only, I believe. At this point.
Oh, I'm sorry. I won't curse anymore. I apologize.
It's 9:30 in the morning, dude. Let's say you're a parent.
Oh, that's right.
My
kids it's lunch hour here.
Aren't your kids in school? My kids are in school.
My kids are in school too, but I don't.
All right.
It's never too early to swear, Jamie.
I've got a horrible mouth. I mean, I'll be honest with you. My son's always like, Daddy, I heard you cursing. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. He goes, I heard you cursing. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. He goes, those are really bad words. And I said, dude, I get it. What the fuck?
Now that's a great use of it. That's a great use of it.
So okay, so I get back from summer camp. I by the way, when I went to summer camp, I worked there. That's how I was able. My parents couldn't afford it, so I worked in the canteen and I was a waiter, and that's how we did it. So I went to camp for free for 3 months or 8 weeks, and my parents sent me away, and that was the best thing in my life, and that's where I caught my first feel and the whole 9 yards. And it was a really good time for me. So when I came back to the city, you know, my friends had been there all summer, and they were like, I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, we met this guy named Gene. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, everybody's been doing this thing called acid. I'm like, really? What's that? He goes, I don't know, but I heard it's a really long ride. And I was like, okay, so what's up? He's like, so you have to lie to your mother, and I'm going to lie to my father, and I'm going to say that I'm at your house, and you're going to say you're at my house, and then we're going to go there and we're going to do acid. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, we go there, and I go to the Gramercy Hotel, and I go to the, you know, I was told to go to the 8th floor and knock on this door, and this woman answers the door, and her name's Kathy, and she's like, who the hell are you? And I said, hi, I just wanted to get some acid. You know, I've got here's $10. I'm like 13 years old. And I'm like, she's like, okay, come in. And I do it. And, you know, we get the acid, and then we go back. And this guy, Jean, had this crazy apartment in Gramercy Park. Like, I mean, unbelievable apartment. His father was this art dealer, and this is when I saw like real money for the first time. Like, I didn't know anybody who had money. You know, all my friends were broke, and their parents were artists, and my parents were artists, and you know, we didn't like, you know, we didn't go to Hawaii, and we didn't, you know, like, you know, me going to summer camp, people are like, oh, you went to summer camp. I'm like, well, I worked there. That's how I went. But anyway, so we go back to this apartment, and it's the entire thing is like this medieval apartment. It's gorgeous, and we're sitting there, and I'm taking this acid, and I'm watching this painting of Christian Deneuve like melt. It's just melting, you know, and it's just, I'm like watching, going, holy shit, this is like unbelievable. So I didn't realize that we were doing, just so everybody and your audience knows, we were doing acid that was like 400 mics, which is probably close to what they were doing on sugar cubes in the 60s. It was really clean. It was really good. You didn't have to worry about shit.
Yeah.
I'm reading these.
I know, right? Genevieve says New York City kids have the best growing up stories. Nothing that exciting could ever happen where I grew up. I couldn't agree more. But as
she's from here, Jamie. So you've been here.
Yeah. Where are you guys, Jason?
We're like an hour and a half north of Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Oh my God, Scranton! That's where the office happens.
Yes.
No,
yes.
trust me,
Basically,
at least you got put on the map for something other than like
and
drug dealers.
And that's why I don't know the culture of Jewish folks, because there are none here.
No, there's none. Well, there's Amish, but they're not Jewish.
Dude,
no, it's a whole other thing.
Here's my question about the whole story is that, like, my kids have had a sleepover so far, but we're always in touch with the other parents. Like, I would never be like, okay, you're staying over there. Like, it was just a different era where you were like, see you later. And your parents were like, all right, see you tomorrow. Like, I don't think that happens anymore.
No, I don't think it does either. Like, we had sleepovers and shit like that, but it was more like, sorry, I didn't mean to curse. But it was the sleepovers was a way to stay up all night. So we would go to the friend's house, like my friend Zed, his house, for instance. His father, there were like no rules. He was a single father. They had this beautiful apartment, you know, it was a rent controlled apartment. And we would like stay out till like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd stumble home, and we'd be like, hey, what's up? And we'd be sitting on stoops, smoking weed and doing drugs and doing shrooms like your friend Joey did. And we would be doing acid. And we didn't really get into harder stuff until we got older. harder stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
But psychedelics, I mean, I don't know.
Seconds ago.
I don't know if I consider, I don't know if I consider psychedelics to be hard drugs. I mean, I guess they are because I'm a parent, and it's not like I would want my son doing them.
I know,
But-
like you are, in theory, you are 4 years away from your son dropping acid if he goes on your track. How you feel about that?
My son couldn't be any further away from on that track. I mean, it's weird. It is weird though, because like I look at my son.
I'm gonna give him the audiobook of your book, and then he'll be on your track.
Boy, Minecraft will be a whole other experience for him.
Yeah.
Please don't, Kate.
Like,
If you do, Kate,
alive.
I will kill you.
Creepers.
What scares me more is, and I'm gonna get heavy for a second, just because we're talking about it. Is that
It's St. Patrick's Day. Let's find a reason to drink. Okay, go.
Thank you. One of the people that I met when I was 12 years old in the streets was a guy that molested me, and I write about it in my book, and I put it out there for people to understand, because it's what I realize, it's the mind games that pedophiles play on their victims, and I think that is one of the worst things that could happen in the world. So it's for me, it's trying to make sure that my kid stays street smart enough to know the difference between right and wrong, but still have his own path, because that's the most important thing. I'm not writing his story, he is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to influence his story. I want to make sure that he's safe, and that he has love, and that he has creativity and freedom to do what he needs to do without having to worry about things like that. Because that ultimately changed the course of my life. So I want to make sure that, and I think that led to a lot of the excessive drug use that I did. And,
Of course. There's,
trying to mask things and all that.
because that pain is impossible to manage. You have to, that pain.
I'll be honest, I didn't tell anybody until I wrote this book. I talked to no one about it, because this man threatened to kill my family when I was a kid, and it stuck in my head for so long. And then you're ashamed.
Are your parents still with us?
Yes, they are. And my mother.
Do they know?
Yes, they do. Yeah. But it was necessary. I mean, you know what it is? And I realized I put out this book and I talked about the raw things that are in my life, because I'm like, you know what? I need to evolve. I need to move on. I need to be the next level. And I don't want to, there's my favorite movie in the world is Defending Your Life. I don't want to come back. You know what I mean? I don't. I want to go on to the next thing. And I think getting over your fear is one of the heaviest things you can do. And that was mine. It was the fear of myself. It was the fear of people judging me, and I don't care anymore, because I've evolved to that sense, and I'm not finished, and it's just a little piece. And if someone, like I said before, if someone gets something out of my book that helps them, it's great.
Did you, when you had your son, did that open up a different part of the healing process for you, or did that actually sort of put the gas on I gotta heal, how did that all?
I think the main thing is I had 4 years ago I was in the hospital. I was working. I also do production design, and I was working in New York City, and I was feeling kind of sick when I was leaving, and I got to New York, and I've known I had diverticulitis for a lot of years, but I'd never had a case of it. So I'm in New York, and I'm like, my stomach feels like it's got a bowling ball in it, and I feel really weird, but I put myself on this bone broth, and I'm healing myself, and I'm great. And I still have a fever, and I'm weird. I'm in Pennsylvania at St. Mary's Hospital in Bucks County. And I perforate. I was at my aunt's house, and my bowel perforated, and I had sepsis and abscesses, and I'm literally near death. I'm pretty close. I mean, my
honestly, did you die? I'm did you die? Who are we? Is this the ghost of you? Because there's no way.
Would someone get this girl a drink? Someone just get her a
drink. Trust me, she's already started, please.
Okay. But, so when I had this experience, for the first time in my life, I'm calling my lawyer in California. I'm I don't have a will. And he's like, okay, I'll get you a will. I'll draw up a will and I'll send it to you and you can sign it and all this stuff. And, and I'm okay. And then I'm all of a sudden you are in control of your life. Like I had to fight off doctors not to cut me open because I didn't trust them. I didn't know who. I'm like, this guy's like, well, I've got to open you up. I'm like, why? He's like, well, because I don't really know what's wrong with you. I'm like, so you're just going to practice on me? Is that what you're going to practice? Like, hey, fuck it. Let's give this guy a colostomy bag just for the hell of it. Why not? So what I did was, and this is, I put myself on a Dilaudid vacation, and I literally did Dilaudid every hour for 2 weeks. And when I was done, my body was okay and it healed itself, and I left the hospital on my own accord. But during that process, when I was like, I don't have time for BS anymore. Like I'm too old, I'm 52 years old. At the time I was 48. I'm 51. I'll be 52 this year. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to be honest with everybody.
Oh, we just lost, but something that just happened, but also we all just did drugs.
I feel like we all just did a giant.
We just all took it
because
you said.
Can we talk about Cheryl Gibson? I grew up in Kansas. I took a field trip to the deepest hand-dug well. That's my favorite. From in New Hampshire, I think it was like Strawberry Bank was our.
Is it okay?
Oh,
yeah,
no, it was. I gotta tell you, I hope you watch that part back because we all just took a trip. We all just you went. Oh, wait, why?
So basically, at the end of the day, that was a little piece of what kind of brought me to reality.
Yeah, we're all hearing an acid, Cheryl. Hey, dude. So, all right. So, listen, you're 12. You start the drugs. I mean, you still have 7 years. All of a sudden, you start really working as an actor while you're still. I mean, it's almost like a Robert Downey Less Than Zero movie back in the. You're a kid actor. You're going to auditions. Your parents don't seem very involved whatsoever with your life at that age.
I'm like fully. Look, my parents were great parents. I love my parents. I mean, they gave me the creativity to do what I had to do. And I started modeling at 10 because there was a woman in my building who was like, hey, I think you've got potential. And I've got a friend at Ford. And so I started
This isn't the lady in the bathrobe, is it?
No. Oh my God. That's not, that was,
okay.
Oh my God, the bathrobe lady. No. She actually lived in my building. I didn't spy on. I didn't. And Kate Mulligan is making a reference to me spying on my neighbor across the building with binoculars. Which you can't really.
Wow, you are dreamy.
Oh, thank you so much. That's me at 15 years old. So when I
was, are you really 15?
By the way, to be fair, and this is going to sound absolutely horrible, and I think Mulligan knows what's coming, but the fact you only got molested once, I mean, kind of a win, really. I mean, look at that dude.
He didn't say he only got molested once.
I just wrote about it.
Oh, you only wrote about the one time, but I mean, that kid walking around New York City on the subway system, you're lucky to be alive, dude. You're lucky
I thought you were talking about backstage at our improv show. I'm sorry.
Gibson had that poster on our wall.
I'm gonna invent a time machine and go back to that playland.
Yeah. Dude, what am I thinking right there?
I was on the Morton Street Pier and I was going, when am I gonna be able to get that chick? I just want to know, is this going to help? And it did, I guess. I guess that picture helped.
The little James Spader.
There's a little Jeff Bridges in there.
It's a little John Cougar Mellencamp.
Yeah, little Mellencamp. Yep.
It's like I would say better looking
and a little Billy Zabka. Little Billy Zabka.
Billy Zabka. Jason said Judge Reinhold.
But like to the next level, Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
I would say
that mullet. That's a mullet and a half right there, buddy.
Dude. Andy Gibb. Andy Gibb.
Yeah.
I want to hear everybody's internal dialogue for this picture. Because I think for me it is. I'm pretty sure I'll always have these cheekbones.
Pretty close. And he's like, well, should I prop my head up with my thumbs or both, one thumb, two thumbs?
Two thumbs.
How do I hold my head up?
Do I do the?
I feel like my pictures, like my senior pictures, are always like.
I mean, you were like this. You were like,
You know what, Genevieve? You're absolutely right. A little
It
Keith
is.
the
Oh,
Sutherland.
Keith, yes,
Super.
yes, Jobo.
Jobo, that's gold. It is
Yeah,
very
Jobo hit it.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
maybe young Sean
Oh
Connery.
wow.
You know, I think that I think that it's funny in New York City. Like my parents,
Here's
it's
the
not-
church. Here's the steeple.
Cheryl is rocking it today.
Cheryl, you are killing it today. Inside's all the people.
I think my parents were like, I think they were regular parents. They tried to do their best with me and all that kind of thing.
It was a different era. So your
It
parents
was.
were
So my parents. So we were going back to the acting stuff. So I started off as a model, but my parents made it very clear they weren't going to drag me around to auditions. Like my father worked in New Jersey. He drove in and out of the city every day. My mother was in graduate school and she was a therapist. Like that wasn't going to happen. So if I wanted to do it, I had to go do it.
I have a question. Most people work in the city.
Jamie Keller, right?
Most people work in the city and live in Jersey, and your father's no. I'm gonna make it really hard on myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live in the city, although
And
the
work-
city's probably wide open. He's the only.
It was the official reverse commute.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense.
It did.
We were
It
alone
did.
on the train.
But you know what's funny is I remember my dad, he would drive, and because we had a car, because you could have a car in New York City. And my dad would drive, and then when I would get home, he was always sitting in a spot that was illegal, waiting for it to go legal. So he would sit there from 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock till he could get out of his car, and he'd be sitting there editing books and stuff because that's what he did. My father was he is a writer in a school, and my dad, he would sit there and edit, and it's like I have this memory of the blue folder with the blue pencils, and my dad sitting there with longhand editing all the stuff.
Have
So
your
my
parents
point.
read the book?
Yes, they did. Yeah,
Were they surprised by, or did they know some of the stuff?
I think they knew some of the stuff. I mean, my parents were there in 1986 when I had a drug overdose and died.
Okay.
But my mother was, my mother. It's funny when my mother reads the book. She just read it recently. She ordered a copy. She asked for it ahead of time, and I said, you know what? Let me just get it released, and then you can read it. And I did, and she goes, I'm so proud of you, and I said, I appreciate that. And she goes, no. I mean, it's a really good book. And I said, thanks. I appreciate your support. And she goes, no, I mean, it's like a good book. And I'm like, I know, I wrote it. I get it. But I don't take compliments well all the time. But the one thing I'm proud of is this book because it's honest. I had a woman work on this book with me years ago, 12 years ago. I wrote this book quite some time ago, and I shelved it because of this comment. And she said, you know what? I think it's a good book, but I think you really need to put it out there. And that's when I took a bunch of stuff that I wasn't going to put in, and I went, whoosh, and all of a sudden I'm what I realize is you only need one moment in a book to make it raw.
Yeah.
And the molestation and some of the bad moments in
All
the book.
right. I'm going to interrupt you because we're talking about the book, but I want to hear stories from the book. And you can't drop a line like you just did 2 minutes ago where you're like, oh, that was the story when I OD'd, and then just move right home. You can't go, oh, do you remember the time I invaded Russia? And you're like, wait, what? You gotta.
So it was 1986, and it's New Year's Eve, and I was working in the village. I went to an alternative high school called City As, and I had a job working for this photographer, and it was great job. I was a guy named Bruce Fields. He was a phenomenal. Oh wow! Oh my god! Oh my god! That's so effed up. Look at that. He's died twice. Oh my god.
Yeah.
So
sepsis, OD. Yeah.
Never invade Russia in the winter.
True.
That's actually Jobo is actually Napoleon reincarnated.
Oh, is he? He is. That's good. So I was hanging out, and I got this job, and my life was on a good spot. And then I went, and my friends were, we were all going to a party at my buddy's house, and two of them were doing blow, and two of them were doing ecstasy, and there wasn't really enough of one for me. So I went to their house, and I was like, okay. So I started snorting a bunch of blow, and I was you know, we were doing bowls of weed and coke and all this stuff and hash.
Mm.
And then I snorted some ecstasy and it was good, but it wasn't high enough because I really needed to get high because it was fucking New Year's Eve. You know,
Yeah.
you gotta get annihilated. So I went to Washington Square Park and I picked up 2 hits of candy cane acid. And I figured they were bunk, so I did them both. And all of a sudden, I went back to my buddy's house, and things just changed very rapidly.
Weird.
I started getting into a very dark place very quickly, and I realized, and this was the biggest part. And anybody who's done drugs knows that you go, oh my God, this is what it's like right before you die.
Mm.
And then that's it. And then you're on that path. So then I'm on that, and I'm like, I'm sticking my fingers down my throat like a prom queen. And I'm like trying to puke it up, and I can't puke it up because there's nothing in my stomach. I just did like, acid. And I'm like, okay, so I'm on this ride. And then things got dark and I started palpitating. And my friends, we had a friend's father, my friend Zed's dad was like, he had done a lot of acid and he had been an acid guide in the 60s. So he's like, we call him. He's like, what? He's like, okay, yeah, bring him here. So we go there and my friends split out. And then when my friends split, the kid who actually was his son came back with a girl that I had known and, liked and tried to date years ago. And he was like, we're working her all night. He was like trying all night to be with her. So I was like, no, she's with me now. That happened, that moment. And he was like, fire was like shooting out of your eyes. And at this point, I was really, really high on drugs. I was just like peaking on acid. It was like 3 hours later, the ecstasy was kicking. I was still the cocaine. It was all just in my body. And and then at one point we got into a physical fight and he threw me out of his house. And when I ran down the stairs, I started screaming. All of a sudden, I started going into a psychotic episode. And I started screaming at the top of my lungs and climbing a fence that was about, 30 feet off the ground. And I got to the top of the fence and the police came, obviously. And it took 6 of them to try to hog tie me. But while they were trying to hog tie me, they suffocated me out. So I had to, I had paddles and the whole 9 yards. And
So back up. Let me interrupt. I'm so sorry because so you almost died, but it had nothing to do with the amount of drugs in your system. It was the fact that the cops choked you out.
Yes.
I mean, all of this story is believable. Yeah, I believe it. Yep.
I've been there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I didn't like overdose on drugs. I overdosed on being killed. You
underdosed on oxygen, I think it's called.
Yeah. Yeah. So when they also didn't realize that I was 16 years old. And, I think that moment of them realizing, I mean, I don't think they really cared, to be honest with you. It was in New York City's finest. I put one of them in the
You look 22. Come on.
And that literally is that year. That's how old I was when that happened. So I think, I had an Abraham Lincoln of scabs all over my face from them grinding my face into the concrete. They broke my ankle. They ruptured my kidney. I broke a couple of ribs. I mean, it was a bad
there'd be a lawsuit. Someone would have it. I had the same thing happen with cops actually, and nowadays you'd be worth millions.
Oh yeah, yeah. Back then, my mother was
cops. They didn't get rich.
And my mother, worked at Metropolitan Hospital at the time, and she worked at when she worked there, she wasn't used to seeing her son. So when they came in, I'll never forget it. This guy, I'm in Bellevue Hospital. I'm hogtied in Bellevue. I'm on a gurney, and a guy said to me, he's like, the doctor came in, and he said, I said, what do I do? And he's like, they gave me Epicac, and I'm puking my brains out. And then my mother comes in, and they had done a test, and my mother, and I'm right there lying to my mother. The first thing, the instinct is lie, right? So I go, Mom, I was just doing, and the guy goes, you were on lysergic acid, cocaine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, marijuana and alcohol. And I have no idea why you're alive. And he left the room. Mm-hmm. And my mother is staring at me, crying, going, and that's when everything changed, because I couldn't lie anymore. You know, you
Right.
get to this point where you just can't lie anymore, you know? So I think for me, that was the big changing time, you know?
Have you and her discussed it since then, that incident?
Have I ever discussed it?
Yeah, like that
Or-
particular, like what that was like for her. Like, have you had dialogue about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, you know, we talked about it, and I think my mom got over it and I got over it, you know? I mean, that's the thing. You have to get through it, you know? I mean, you know, again, we're back to that whole thing about evolving, you know, and I really try to evolve. I do my best, you know. I try to be kind to people. I try to do unto others. I try to be honest as much as I can without hurting people's feelings. But sometimes, you know, what are you going to do? You know, I think that at the end of the day, that was my journey. And like I said before, if my journey can help another journey, fantastic. If it
what does a
doesn't,
ruptured kidney do? I really can't get over that they ruptured your kidney.
they were hitting me with a billy club to try to calm me down. And when they hit me with the billy club, they ruptured my kidney. So I
what do you do about a ruptured kidney? Is it gone?
nothing. It has no. It just has to heal. They basically, I was passing blood. That's what happened.
I think you just did. You did Dilaudid for 2 weeks, isn't that?
Yeah,
Isn't that how-
Now that was a vacation that I recommend to anybody.
From now on,
Because let me tell you,
Already goes,
pharmaceutical
wow.
heroin is a
I hurt
whole
my
different
back.
story.
I better do a Dilaudid 2-week session just to get.
Thank you very much.
Here's what I
Cheryl.
love too. Like you, it's like
Cheryl just said I'm an inspiration, and you know, honestly, I really appreciate that.
the
That's-
mixture of drugs is so. It's like it's an Irish coffee basically. Like an Irish coffee is like, or like a Red Bull vodka. Like I used to serve those in the bar all the time, where alcohol's the depressant, and then the caffeine goes to here, and you're like, well, why don't you just do nothing or don't do? But you're like you're mixing marijuana with cocaine,
yeah.
with acid, with X. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, I don't think people, you know, look, nowadays like hippie flipping and people do like acid and mushrooms and they do ecstasy and mushrooms and they do this and that. I mean, I think the days of speedballing, which is what you're talking about, Jamie, is speedballing. I don't think really people speedball anymore. And if they do it because they're completely addicted to drugs. And I get that because, you know,
that's what killed Belushi.
it is speedballing when he died at the Marmont. Yeah. I mean, he died there. And I think that's what it does. You know, when we were kids in New York City, we were doing this shit because we just wanted to get high and we just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what's funny? Somebody talked to me. God, what were they talking to? They were talking about drugs nowadays versus then. You know, like the pot nowadays it's so crazy. Like they've got it so scientifically like concentrated. And nowadays, like I know comics, those comics who OD because there's fentanyl in everything nowadays. Like there's no more just recreational drugs anymore because you could just do a couple bumps of coke and you'll die from it because of the fentanyl now. Back in those days, you could, you know, you kind of could do a lot of different things and get away with it. And nowadays you would kill you.
Well, that's why at festivals now they actually have booths set up and they will test your drugs for you, which is great.
Fentanyl,
it's fantastic.
And I actually
know that. That's
I was talking.
Wait, really?
Yeah. You drop your
Here's
drugs
my drugs. Test this for me. Yep. Is some dude just going, oh yeah.
Okay. Yep.
They're like, yeah. I mean, it's probably like 80%. I love that. It's good. It's good stuff.
Bobcat Goldthwait from Blow. Where he's like, oh man, it's off the charts, man. 98, 99. Oh,
you guys talk amongst yourselves. I gotta grab my charger. Hold on.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing that they do. They don't want anybody dying at their festival. So we're like,
it's smart. I mean, it's smart.
And it's anonymous. They're like, you know, you wait, like they have a thing and then they will give it back to you and let you know. And if it's got fentanyl in it, they won't give it back to you.
So they just take a small cut then?
No. you bring the tabs, but no, I think I wish that was a thing that cities had. I wish it wasn't like just festivals. I wish people could, because this fentanyl epidemic is like real.
Back then, you were more worried about, you weren't worried about it, but like kids died from falling out of the back of a pickup truck at a drive-in.
Yeah.
Or, you know, drunk driving or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like it's so different nowadays. Like the parents, like we don't really like. My wife still is like really worried about the kids getting taken. I go, there's cameras everywhere. You really, the only place to be really worried about is online, because that's where they all are. They're not coming to get you anymore. They're luring you out of the nest. Like that's how they're doing it now, because they know they're on video camera and they have to bring you somewhere. And so
Well, we were lucky, man. We grew up in analog. You know, it's like I didn't, you know, we didn't have cell phones. We were lucky to have cable, you know, like
my parents did tell
we
me
had a dial, you know, on cable.
My mother would be like, you know,
Channel J. You know, I love
my mother would be like, someone will take you. If anyone talks to you, they'll take you. Don't, you know, like I would be in Sears Roebuck somewhere and I'm going to go play on the escalator, because that was what you did as a kid. And then my mother would be like, okay, but if anyone talks to you, yell, don't leave this store.
Also, she was bringing 7 children to the Sears Roebuck with her. She was going to lose.
No, because Jamie was the last. He was the lone man left behind. He was the youngest.
He was the youngest. Yeah, Jamie's got a brother. Isn't your brother like 80?
There's 6 kids over 20 years. The closest one to me is like 7 or 8 years older than me. So I was a total surprise, and I kind of grew up as an only child, even though I'm the youngest of 6.
Wait, do you really have a brother that's in his 80s?
No, he is in his 70s, and he's a former admiral, and he is a retired admiral from the Navy. Yeah,
Will you send me a picture of him in his dress whites?
He's a good cat, Herb, my brother Herb.
He's no chill, Kate. No chill.
I'm just saying.
Listen, this isn't about me. This is about stories from your book. I mean, it's pretty. I was so intrigued about. Because I have friends who grow up in the city. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Get out of the city. And so to think of that era of the early 80s, I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? Like Big City and stuff. And to think of kids like just running loose at 12 years old around there is insane.
It's funny because I always say to people, they're like, what's your book about? And I said, it's somewhere between kids and the Pope of Greenwich Village.
Mm-hmm.
We're right there in between. Yeah. And we were this darker time, because the problem with the movie Kids, I thought it was a great movie, and I think he did
that
a
movie
wonderful
scarred
job.
me.
It did, but I'll be honest with you, we were those kids 10 years earlier. You know, the problem is that we were still in the analog generation. They kind of were too. Like those kids didn't really have cell phones and all that stuff. Some of them did, and they were there.
Honestly, somebody should rap over that beat. That was a pretty tight beat. Let's bring it back, see if it works. Cheryl's like, wait, are we doing acid for St. Patrick's Day? What?
Am I back on?
You're back.
Yes. Okay. For whatever reason, it sort of goes robotic, and it just repeats one of your words really rapidly. All
right, we've covered drugs. We've covered little molestation. We've covered some hotties. How about a great story about like, oh my gosh, I'm succeeding as an actor in New York City?
When I was 14 years old, I got my first acting job on a soap opera, and I was sitting there, and I'm all stressed, and I get like the pages the day before, you get the pages, and I get in there, and this guy Charlie greets me at the door. He's like, "Hey, how you doing, kid? You're on television today. Come on, let's go." And I said, "Well, I've been working on my stuff, and I think it's going to be great." He's like, "Oh no, that's all changed. Here's the new pages." And I'm like, "What do you
mean? Those are the new pages?" So I'm sitting there, and there is this actress, Susan. I'm trying to remember her name. She was on All My Children, and she's there, and she's like, the girl who's supposed to be my girlfriend, like, has no time for me, because I'm like, this like reoccurring character. They're like, whatever, And she sits there with me, and she's like, "Oh, the best way I find to learn your lines is to run them with somebody." So we sit there by the craft service table, and she's running lines with me, and she's like the biggest thing on television, and she's like sitting there like ingratiating me with her time, and I'm like, amazing. That was one thing. And I remember I was going to HB Studios, and I wanted to study with Bill Hickey. If anybody doesn't know Bill Hickey, he was an amazing. He talked like this. What?
He's Pritzy's honor.
You want the cookie? So,
she's got to go. That's what his big line from Pritzy's honor. He goes,
she's gotta go.
Yeah,
She's gotta go. Jack, I'm sorry. So I love Pritzy's honor, Jack, man. Oh God, he was so good in that movie. So and Angelica Houston, God, what a brilliant actress she was.
Ugh, what a
So
babe too.
I'm going to it's raining and I'm like 14 years old and I go to HB Studios because I want to study with Bill, you know. And I'm sitting there in the rain and this older guy walks up to me and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm waiting for Bill Hickey. I have to have him sign a piece of paper so that I can go in his class." He goes, he comes in an hour or two. What do you want? And I said, "I want to take his class." He goes, "Oh, okay, come inside." So I come inside and it's Herbert Bergdorf. And I'm sitting there talking to Herbert Bergdorf, and he's like, "So why do you want to study with Herbert?" He's a nice man, but he talks stories all day, you know. And I said, "I don't know." And he goes, "Yeah, dude, if he doesn't want to take you, I'd take you in my class." So I studied with Herbert Bergdorf from that because of that story. And it's like, you know, the amazing things about this book that I realize about my life is that no matter what happened, I always sort of drifted to the top. I was always able to come out of a situation with a positive attitude and with not having the world beat me down and not having a chip on my shoulder. And I think that was the key. You know,
well, there's no chip on your shoulder. There was some bruised kidneys. And
but no, there was no chip on my shoulder.
Hyperplicated colon, I believe, was involved. But no chip.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing is that whatever happens in life, it happens. You know, everybody has their story. You know, everybody has their reasoning for doing what they do. Mine was this, you know, everybody has their thing. What I can say is that and it sounds so trite, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's true. And the drugs did help Cheryl. They did.
But to be fair, for some people, like River Phoenix, it did not make him stronger.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that was a bad day.
Too far for St. Patrick's Day. Was that too?
No.
Let's and they're tearing down the Viper Room to make a. Did you hear that? The Viper Room's gone now. Yeah, they're tearing it down to make a massive building.
No.
Yeah, it's over.
That's Hollywood.
They don't care anymore. And that liquor store, he died in front of that liquor store. I know the payphone that he died in front of. His brother, because again, it was 1991 and we didn't have cell phones. So his brother was on the phone with 911 and his River is in his lap overdosing on he had
Here's the problem. He did all the same drugs as you, except he also had some cough syrup. And that's as we all know, you don't mix those other drugs with cough syrup. That's really
is that really what happened?
No, but he did have all those drugs in his
okay.
he was speedballing. Yeah, he was speedballing.
I'll have to watch that HLN show the last 24 hours or however it goes. Hey, we got to wrap this pretty quickly. I want to have one last fun story about Newsies, which, by the way, is going to
Santa Fe.
You are in Newsies with Christian Bale for didn't you shoot for 2 months?
I am. You know, I did. I shot for 6 months, and I am going to tell you that story. But one of the stories that I got to tell you really quickly because it's in my book. When I came out to Los Angeles, I was supposed to stay with a friend, and he, of course, you know, flaked on me, and I didn't get to stay. He had a place in Venice, and I didn't get to stay there. So I was like literally living in my car for a couple of days, and I got into an acting class, and this is like old school Hollywood. This is 1989, and not old school, like it's the 1950s, but it was the time when you could actually go to a class, and they were like, "Oh, we're having a showcase," and
yes.
a girl's partner had an emergency, and he had to leave, and they're like, "Can you fill in this role?" And I was like, "Sure, I'm an actor from New York. I could do it." So I do that. I was seen by Barbara Miller from Warner Brothers at Lorimar at the time. And I booked the lead role on Falcon Crest. I was Danny Sharp on Falcon Crest for a year. But what's interesting about it is that I was here a month to the day and I got a lead role on a series without an agent, without a manager, and without a job. I didn't even have a job. So all of a sudden, I was making $100,000 a year, and I just got there. You know what I said to myself? This place is fucking easy.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me?
I mean, it's easy when you look like that. Yeah.
And you live with
I
Luke
had a
Perry.
slightly harder time.
Yeah, Luke Perry and I were roommates.
You can't act at all. Who cares? Put that guy on camera.
I like him. He's nice. And then so Newsies I did like a couple of years later. Like I said, I was living with Luke Perry. He and I were roommates. We were also
right. I'd forgotten you were roommates with Luke Perry.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Newsies,
with
Kevin
Smets. Yes.
Yep. And so I got Newsies, and it was so funny because I do sing. I mean, I'm not great, but I can sing and hold a tune. And they said, we actually have this role. Kenny Ortega goes, we actually have this role of the bad guy. And I'm like, I'd love to be a bad guy. He's like, well, you're the Delancey brothers. So me and Sean Greenblatt we're and I would love to bring a picture of it, but I don't have a picture of it that I can just be like, oh, actually, I probably do somewhere, but I'm not going to waste your time.
You're on a work day. What about we have a bunch of regulars who come in, and Suge's like, wait, you guys are doing this on a day? Yeah.
It's a work day. Whatever.
Brother.
So at the end of the day, it was a really great experience. I got to be in a cast with Robert Duvall and Christian Bale and Bill Pullman and Anne Margaret, and I got to meet I got to meet Gene Kelly, and it was an amazing experience. And what's funny about that movie is it bombed. It was like this $60 million bomb.
That's so funny. I remember, I loved that movie. I felt like that movie was massive.
What happened is that it became a cult hit 20 years later. And then the 20s generation back then, who are now in their 30s and 40s, those people, and they made a musical out of it. And then because of the musical, it won Tonys, and then the movie became big again, and it all resurfaced. So it became this cult classic. So I became Morris Delancey, this cult classic guy.
It's truly amazing. I mean,
I
love that movie.
All right, listen, we got to wrap this thing.
I can't.
You have to go somewhere.
I can't think of it.
Put the book up. Can we post the cover?
Yeah, where do you want people to buy it, Dave? Like,
you know what? If you just go to Amazon, it's fine. It's in some bookstores in California, but yeah, you're more than welcome. If you go to Amazon, you can just look up Village Idiot, David Scheinkopf. It comes right up. If you go to the website is www.villageidiotthebook.com, so you can go there and it'll hit a link. And I look forward to you guys finishing the book, and the audio book will be up probably in about 2-3 weeks. And,
that's why I'm waiting for the audiobook. I want to hear it through your voice more than anything, because it's way better.
I always wake up with the most amazing boner.
I
mean, come on. That's what everybody says. They go, dude, it's the best line. It's the best.
It's a great opening.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's what's that? Just all of a sudden, I just think of like, I think of like Moby Dick. I'm like, okay, so that's a good line too, I guess.
Yeah, it was the best of times. It was the hardest
worst
of times.
Exactly. It was either Moby Dick or Cheers. I couldn't remember. Sorry. I thank you guys so much. It's been so much fun.
Awesome.
You guys are a fucking
hoot. We're trying to raise kids in the city. I mean, it's such an interesting take on that era and raising kids in the city. Also, dude, I don't know if you know this, but it feels like a TV show.
Just so you know, I'm actually 75 pages into the script.
Yeah.
And the screenplay is, I gotta say, it's really wild because it takes just so you know, it takes the book, but it has a parallel story that's really cool because I didn't want to just do the book. It's too hard. This kind of a book is 300 pages. I could never do it justice as just following that timeline. So I have, it's like all in flashback, and it's an amazing script that's going to be coming out soon. Hopefully,
it's got a vibe of Jim Carroll, the Basketball Diaries.
Yeah, it's very rivaling that. It's very rivaling
that era, which I love. I just love the stories about, kids unbridled, like running rampant over the city, kind of learning about life on their own, as
long as it's not your kids.
Yeah, as long as it's not my kids.
Exactly, because I will break my child if he tries to do stuff like that.
Listen, I love the fact that you kind of got it out of your system, because I see a lot of helicopter kids and they think their parents are perfect, and then I see them somewhere and I can see that sparkle in what they're doing, and I go, that kid's going to be trouble, because they're being so held down through school that when they get out, I mean, I met those girls in college. They were super fun girls. Those are super fun people.
I married one.
Yeah, you did.
You married a cheerleader, Jason. Thank you again. Thank you again.
Thank you for all the people who jumped on to join us
Yeah,
for
thank you.
Randomly Live St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, this was super fun. We weren't going to do it live. It was going to be pre-recorded and kind of put up today, but I love people commenting. Cheryl Gibson, super funny. Genevieve and
I know. Is Cheryl Gibson going to be the fourth panelist on the show now? She's so
I
funny.
know, right? Yeah, we're going to have another
Get rid of the dead weight in the bottom corner.
Dave, we do random shows where we just we send the link out and we let people come in and chat with them. So it's really funny to have everybody. It's really way more fun live to let people kind of comment. So
oh yeah, well, thank you guys for taking the time, and thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
thank you for promoting my book, and I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoyed the read. And to everybody out there, thanks so much for taking time.
And listen, you've got a guardian angel that you survived all of that. So thank you to your guardian angel.
Well, and she's been looking out. She's been looking out for my son too. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really important. All right, hey, next Tuesday we have Greg Cromer's going to be here from the Pamela Adlon show, Better Things. We'll be back live Tuesday night, and Cromer's hilariously funny, and he'll have some crazy stories too. So that's it. Thank you to everybody for joining us here for a very random, spontaneous Parents Lounge show. Everyone go out and enjoy St. Patrick's Day.
Take care.
Have a good night, everybody.